Madhulika, I think let's start.
Sure. A very good evening, everyone. This is Madhulika, and I welcome you all to yet another Zoom webinar organized by Jungle Bells. So on this green occasion, that is World Environment Day, we are hosting this session. So before we start, I request all of you to please close up your cameras and switch off your microphones so that we can take a seamless experience of today's session. Let's get started. I would like to brief you all about Jungle Bells. Jungle Bells is a Pune-based venture exclusively designed for women and started by leading women Hemangi Vartak and Aarti Karve in 2019. What we do, we conduct women-only trips to all the wildlife destinations across India. Also, we conduct nature-based tours in and around Pune. The main objective of our venture is to promote wildlife tourism, wildlife conservation, and wildlife awareness. We also work in collaboration with other tribal companies like Wilderness Safaris, Arunmai Wilderness Safaris, InSearch Outdoors, etc. We have upcoming tours schedules as follows. There is Monsoon Magic of Tadoba tour coming up in the month of August and September. We have Great Himalayan, that is also called as Spiti Valley Road Trip in July and August. So you can definitely connect with us for further more information. We have also a social media presence on FB and Instagram. We have a closed community group and WhatsApp. Please feel free to connect us on 77560 for more details. Moving ahead, this webinar is supported by Sanjeevani Developers. Established in 2004, the Sanjeevani team is now 20 years young as they believe business is more just than making money and every new day is a new opportunity for them to create something better, that is modest home for their clients. Today, Sanjeevani Group is engaged in homemaking, redevelopment, eateries, workspaces, and wildlife conservation too. Mr. Sanjay Deshpande is the founder of this real estate brand. He is a civil engineer with 35 years of experience and an environmentalist with a deep passion of wildlife. Next in line, the second generation featuring Mr. Rohit Deshpande, Mr. Rohan Deshpande, and Mr. Rohit Mahajan continues the legacy of the management ahead. Moreover, the company is a part of several conservation-oriented initiatives and is proudly associated with Jungle Bells. So today's topic is conservation breeding of endangered species. And we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Shukla, IFS. Good evening, sir. Let's see the highlight of his work profile. He is an officer of the 1992 batch of the Indian Forest Service allotted to Madhya Pradesh, Kadar. Presently, he is posted as Member Secretary, Central Zoo Authority, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, that is Government of India. Dr. Shukla commands an extremely wide range of experience in different branches of forestry, including wildlife conservation. He also served as Field Director of Kanha Tiger Reserve, Madhya Pradesh, and Inspector General of Forest, that is National Afforestation and Eco Development Board and Green India Mission, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. He is a renowned conservation photographer with images in many national and international publications. He has also, to his credit, several publications relating to conservation. He has also been assigned the responsibility of One Health as Nodal Officer, focal point in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change for establishment of National Referral Center for Wildlife and One Health collaborations with other ministries and departments. The NRCW will coordinate wildlife, health management and all aspects of wildlife disease control with national and international entities. In G20, under the presidency of India, he coordinated and co-led the thematic negotiations, both physically and virtually, with the G20 countries in the capacity of co-lead ECSWG, that is Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group of G20 on the sub-theme land degradation and biodiversity. He also led the formulation, conceptualization and coordination for the launch of the Gandhinagar Implementation Roadmap and the Gandhinagar Information Portal and the formation of the proposed GIP Alliance. He has received more than 350 awards and honors in national and international salons and circuits. The awards and honors include 11 FIP golds, 5 FIAP golds, 24 PSA golds, 2 GPU gold, 6 WPAI golds, many silvers, bronzes, and ribbons. These acceptances and awards help him to receive many national and international distinctions, which are AFI AP, EFIP, PPSA, GPU CR3, GPU VIP3, FRPA GNG, Honorable PESG SPC, GP, PESG SPC, Honorable VNPC, Honorable WPAI, and Honorable the Photographer Club, Tonzia. He also served a spot among the top Indian exhibitors of 2022, recognized by Federation of Indian Photography. So this is all about his incredible journey. Without a further ado, let's get started. I request Himangi ma'am to please take the conversation ahead with sir. Sir, welcome. Good evening.
A very good evening and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. With all these credentials, we wanted to say all these things because they belong to you and you have achieved it all the way. So we made our audience a little bit, wait for the real thing, but that was it. I mean, these are all your credentials and you're definitely, we should have mentioned it.
Thank you.
So it's absolutely our honor to be, hosting you today as a part of the World Environment Day, and we're celebrating it. And we thought, who better than you could grace our platform? I wanted to just tell the audience that we have had heavy rains in Pune. Internet might be wobbly, but kindly bear with us. We'll come back again because it's not in our hands, so it's been on and off. So that's it. So let's not waste time and just get on to the first question. What made you aspire to be an IFS?
Right. So this is quite an interesting journey for me actually. So
Yes.
frankly speaking, I never aspired to become an IFS when I was studying. So that time my ambition was to become a scientist. Actually, I was doing when I was doing my PG. So that was in human biochemistry, and I was
Okay.
very much interested in immunology and human immunochemistry. So I wanted to go abroad, maybe US, and do some sort of research in immunology. So that's
Okay.
why when I completed my post graduation from University of Allahabad in human biochemistry, so that time I applied for getting some sort of fellowship and research, doing research from Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, and then Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So in
All right.
these both these institutions, I was selected. But what happened, just because my friends were appearing for the civil services, that time I also appeared. I took a chance and I qualified for the preliminary examination, and that actually changed my destiny. That is what I can say actually. So
All
then
right.
I started appearing for I appeared in civil services and in forest service also. Got selected in customs and in forest, and luckily I prefer to join forest service. And this journey and in forest service has been quite satisfying for me.
All right.
Before I go further, I would like to wish everybody a very happy World Environment Day. And today we had a very good beginning. We started the day in the National Zoological Park, that is Delhi Zoo in Delhi, and that is the only zoo in the country that is, managed by the government of India. That is only zoo. So and we had a group of students coming from various schools. So we started some summer camp for students
Oh,
and
wow.
kids in Delhi Zoo, starting from Biodiversity Day, that is on 22nd of May. So that
Okay.
was a 2 weeks long program of summer camp, in which junior and senior students of various schools participated in 2 batches. So now
Okay.
again, coming to the theme for this year's World Environment Day, before we go further,
Sure.
just
Sure.
to share the importance of land degradation, which was a theme for this year. So this year the theme was the land reclamation, desertification, and drought resilience. And similarly, it was our land and our future.
Correct.
So land being the this is the base actually for life, land, water, and air, what we say. So we need to, in any case, we need to protect the land. And if you see the rate of degradation, it is close to 10 to 12 million hectares annually. And because of this, we are losing the biodiversity also. Just to give you a figure, like what we have lost in last 100 years, we have lost close to 83% of all the wild mammals in last
Oh,
100
wow.
years, and 50% of the plants. And similarly, if we take the last 50 years, so amphibian fish, amphibian fish, all the birds and mammals, so that is close to 68%. And this is all because of happening because of the land degradation. So what we need to do is to save our land, reverse the process of land degradation, do the land reclamation, and along with that, we can even think of bringing back the biodiversity which was lost or
Right.
enriching the biodiversity. So now
Right.
with this, I mean, it was just related to the theme of this year,
Right.
World
Right.
Environment Day. So now you can take up your next questions, please.
Sure. Yeah. So, coming to the next question, where was your first posting? I'm sure everyone would want to know that. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey from your first posting till now, and any interesting, incident along the way in your journey?
Sure, sure. So, like in the Forest Service, we have a long training schedule. So,
Right.
initially, for the initial 3 months, we go with other services like IS and IPS. And
Right.
I had the training in the 61st foundational course along with my IS and IPS colleagues in Labasna in Missouri. After that, we had a 2 years period of probation in the Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy in Dehradun. My first posting was we during in probation. We are given the responsibility as range officer, then SDO. So that was in Betul and Burhanpur because I was allotted to Madhya Pradesh cadre. First posting, what I can say, was to me in Sindhi district, that is in the Vindhya area of
Right.
Madhya Pradesh, and that
Okay.
borders with Uttar Pradesh. And there is one very famous tiger reserve in Sindhi. You might be knowing Sanjay Tiger Reserve.
Yes. Yes,
So
sir.
that was my first posting, and
Okay.
that was very very satisfying for me because
Okay.
that area is famous for the coal mines, and
Yes.
that area is known as the energy capital of the country. Also, there
Correct.
are so many power plants just because there are many coal mines.
Right.
I, being posted there in the corporation, I was given the responsibility of reclamation of those overburdened dumps. So we did very good work of reclamation of those overburdened dumps. After that, yeah, if you see in the forest department, there are many functional divisions. So wildlife is also one of that,
Correct.
and one is territorial, where you are the custodian of the forest land. So like
Right.
revenue officers or the collector or the DM, they are the custodian of the revenue land. So similarly, the DFO of the territorial division, he is the custodian of the forest land. So our prime responsibility is to protect and conserve the forest resources. Forest resources means land and any natural resource on that forest land, maybe a mineral, maybe all the forest jungle, all the
Hmm.
woodlots,
Hmm.
similarly all the animals. So
Right.
territorial is very challenging at times because you have to protect the land, you have to protect the trees, you have to protect the animals. So
Correct.
my journey initially when I was posted in Riva and in Deva, so these areas are sensitive from the point of view of illegal mining. So at
Hmm.
times we had conflict with many of such mafias which were operating in those areas. So there
Right.
we had always to travel with armed guards with us. So those were some challenging times when I see. And then coming to my engagement with the wildlife conservation, I got
Right.
posted in Chhindwara, so that was just very close to Page Tiger Reserve. And then I was CCF in again in Sivani Circle, and I had
Right.
additional charge of Page. But for me, the most satisfying was posting in Kanha. So we did a lot
Okay.
of innovative and works in Kanha Tiger Reserve, and there were so coming to Kanha specifically. So can I go ahead and tell what we did in
Sure.
Kanha?
Sure. Sure, sir. Yeah.
So Kanha, if you see, it was first those six tiger reserves which were declared in 1973. So that is the national park, quite an old national park, and it has a very long history of very
Yeah.
good management. And some of the really some very good researches have been done in Kana. The people who are related to wildlife conservation and all the wildlife enthusiasts must have heard of name of George Schiller. So
Yes.
he wrote this Deer and the Tiger in Kana. So there is still a hide in Kana Meadows, so with the name of George Schiller.
Yes.
Then there was a study done by Paul Newton from Oxford
Yeah.
University. So he did a study on symbiotic relationship of cheetal and the langurs. So that was also during 60s and 70s.
Right.
And there was a study done by scientists from Zurich University on the status and ecology of Barasinga. So this all these studies they helped in conservation of some of the
Right.
species. So one of that species is the hard brown Barasinga, which you
Right.
see in Kana Tiger Reserve. So there
Yes.
are three subspecies in India, and this was almost on the brink of extinction during 70s. So that
Right.
time we just had close to 60 individuals of that species, but good conservation efforts and conservation breeding helped in recovering the population, and now there
Right.
are close to 1,000. During my time also, what we did in active wildlife management was
Mhm.
that Madhya Pradesh is leading in active wildlife management. You will not see in many other states, like where as a routine we capture animals and transfer and relocate or reintroduce in new areas. So in
Right.
Kana, what we did was like areas where we did not have very good prey base, we started
Right.
capturing cheetal or the spotted deer from high density area, and then again shifting them to those areas where the prey base was not good. So that
Right.
helped in increasing the tiger population also in those areas.
Correct.
Then in translocation of Barasingha to new home, like we
Mm.
translocated to Satpura Tiger Reserve also. So
Yes.
just because they were only in Kana Tiger Reserve, and in case of epidemic, there was a chance that whole the population may be wiped out. So just to find a new home, they were taken to Satpura. Then rewilding of orphan tiger cubs. Normally,
Mm.
what we know and what we think that once the mother has abandoned the cubs, so it becomes very very difficult for carnivore species for to
Mm.
rewild, because
Mm.
mother teaches them the art of killing or hunting, and when the
Right.
mother is not around, so they cannot learn how to kill. But
Correct.
in Kana, we did successfully this thing, and in my duration also, there was one very famous tigress, Bagin Nalawali of in
Bagenala.
Tiger Reserve, and
Yes.
she was poisoned. That time she had three cubs, so three or four cubs. So only
Right.
two cubs were surviving when somebody had mixed poison in a water hole. So the mother and two cubs had died. So we rescued two cubs. Another one also died of septicemia. Only one female survived. So we kept that female in a large enclosure. We did sort of training, minimizing the human imprinting whatever way it was possible. And that was a very large enclosure in which we kept releasing the natural prey, like starting from cheetal and sambar and wild boar. So they learned
Right.
the art of killing such animals. Then we released them in the Nora Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary, and we got a male from Bandhagal Tiger Reserve. So a pair was released in Nora Dehi. So they mated, and now they gave birth to two litters. So that was a quite successful and quite satisfying experience, like
Right.
rewilding. Just a minute, there is some question actually.
Uh, so I think he's just thanking, but we'll take up the questions in the end. That's what
Sure,
I've
sure.
mentioned.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think Sanjay Deshpande has joined. I'm not very sure. I
Yes.
just wanted.
Yes, he
Yes,
has.
yes, yes. Right.
So
Very good evening, Sanjay ji. So I'll be taking up a little later this question.
yes. Yeah.
So then we also did something to, because unless you involve the community and they become stakeholders in the concept in the process of conservation, you can not think of saving tigers or any other wildlife in for
Right.
eternity.
Right.
So we did engaging them in the nature education program by bringing their kids inside the park, because if you see the wildlife tourism is such a costly affair, not any not a, everybody can
Absolutely.
afford to go inside the park to see a tiger. And the
Correct.
pity is the people who live around the national parks, they hardly get an opportunity to go inside and see the
Right.
tiger. And whereas the people they are coming from abroad and the other big cities who can pay, and they go
Pay.
and they see the tigers. So we
Yes.
used to take the students inside the not only just to show them the tiger, just to interpret the nature and tell them like why they are important. So that was the
Right.
thing which we started. Then I started a school also. That is, a school was started initially for the kids of our frontline staff, which stays inside. But again we started giving admission to the villages, to the boys from the boys and girls from the villages. So that was just a way of connecting with the local community. then to
Right.
engage them to other activities where they can get some employment or additional income for their family. We started some training programs in hospitality and also heavy vehicle motor driving, so that how we added to the economy of and try to place the young boys and girls through the employment, so that they can can reduce their dependence on the forest area. One
Correct.
good things what we did in ecotourism was that one Bagheera app, that is a app
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
just to regulate tourism. So there were many issues with that. People
Right.
initially were not very happy, but though Kana tourism is not pretty disciplined, but still it added more to it, discipline to it. Yes.
Right.
So this is in
Yeah.
brief from my side about Kana. So
Sure.
now you can take up the.
Yes. Next question. So yeah, just to mention that we've I think everyone has heard about the successful relocations about from Kanha, and how they have meticulously and very I mean, properly, I can say, executed the entire thing. I also liked your aspect about opening a school or getting those kids to the forest nearby, so they also get to experience. But it's very important that it uplifts the morale of the young children who are going to be, being going to be brought up there itself, and they will look forward for the coexistence, if we may call, with the wildlife, basically. So this is really commendable. Thank you so much. Next question is, which was your most challenging posting? I mean, what would you say that it was really a mammoth job for you to take on something?
For me, the most challenging posting was when I was posted in Devas. So just that has got some good teak forest, and that
Right.
is surrounded by the some big cities like Indore and Bhopal. So there
Okay.
was too much of pressure of illicit felling on these forests. And
Okay.
during that time, I had tough time, because many times it happens that even people from administration also get involved to such activities.
Right.
That time we had to seize a vehicle of police department, a truck of the police department, that illegally felled trees were being transported in that truck for
Oh.
one very senior police officer. And
Okay.
when I confiscated that truck, so definitely it has to be some serious
Oh,
issue.
the repercussions.
So
Yeah.
that is one of the most challenging thing for me, because taking action against such a senior officer and confiscating
Right.
material, and then again we took all the could apprehend and then produce all the people who were involved in that illicit felling, and
Right.
finally all the erring police officers, they were also taken to judicial court, and there
Correct.
were proper legal action was taken.
Okay. Okay. Oh,
Yes.
that's, yeah. Moving on to the next question. I think we've covered this. You've also served as field director of Kanha Tiger Reserve. Please share your experiences, what you've just shared with us right now towards wildlife conservation and outreach activities. Do you want to add anything, or would that summarize what you've just mentioned?
No, this summarizes actually, because we should move to the zoo side also,
Yes.
because I
Yes.
wanted for more.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
Listeners
One
to bring me.
one thing before we move to the zoo thing. You are a very good photographer. I have been following your Insta handle. It's also, I would like to mention here to the audience that you are more into a conservation angle of photography rather than just a photo kind of a this thing. So how did you get into this, and what interests you to highlight the conservation aspect of it?
Okay. So, I mean, from my college days, I've been interested in photography as such, and but not
Right.
exactly that time. I was doing only nature or wildlife. Uh,
Okay.
this service gave me that opportunity actually, working
Yes.
close to nature with the wildlife and the Madhya Pradesh especially. So this is such a state which is very very rich when you talk of wildlife. So
Absolutely.
here, so during my posting, many times it happened that the Madhya Pradesh does not have many large cities where you can keep your family. Actually, some small cities are there from the point of view of education of your children. So those
Right.
places are very challenging assets. So I have to keep my family, like when I was posted in Khandwa, so my family was staying in Indore, my wife and
Okay.
my kids. So that time I was having enough time to go into the forest area when I was not having that sort of family responsibility. So in
Right.
most of my free times, I'll go to some water body or some wetland, and whenever there was any information related to a rescue of any animal, so that was also a good chance to see.
Right.
It gave me an opportunity to look like what are the reasons for some of the issues related to wildlife and
Right.
how the number is declining. So, like
Right.
just to give you an example, like one of the species which has very a thin distribution, that is forest owlet. So that
Yes.
was reported from the jungles of Burhanpur and Khandwa,
Hmm.
in some ranges of Khandwa, and so that distribution is very, and that is critically endangered, that species. So then we took up the issue like how do we manage our forest also to save that bird.
Right.
Similarly, for many of the reptiles or snakes,
Hmm.
so, through photography, I just got interested in those species and then learned about their behavior, the ecology, and then I started working towards the conservation of those species. So
Right.
that exactly gave me an opportunity, and especially if you talk of my love for animals, after tigers, my most favorite animals are snakes.
See.
So that
Okay.
also actually I started when I started clicking snakes, and once you click any animal or bird or something, you try
Right.
to identify, and that also then you get more involved with that subject or animal, and you try
Correct.
to know more about it. So
Right.
for me actually, I have worked quite a lot for snakes also.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So just to tell the audience, when I first spoken to Sanjay sir, he told me, Hemangi, I want to highlight the aspect of zoo and the lesser known things. So Kanha and everyone knows about it, but people don't know, they're not aware about the zoos and zoo aspects and what comes under that and things. So I'll just move on to the next question, which is related to the same thing. As a member secretary, you're heading the right now the Central Zoo Authority. Uh, is it a separate entity or is it under the MOEFCC? What you can say, and please tell us about the Central Zoo Authority and the importance of zoos in wildlife conservation.
Okay, so I'll have a small presentation also to take you through about
Sure.
the CZA and how does
Sure.
it function, and what are the important activities what we are doing. So
Right.
actually, initially, if you see in the Wildlife Protection Act, when it was enacted in '72, that time there was no provision of zoo as such in that act.
Right.
Uh, there were no rules or any provision for creation of any body which can look after the functioning of the zoo.
Right.
So it was through an enactment of Parliament in 1991.
Hmm.
A section was added to Wildlife Protection Act, and one statutory body was created. So Central Zoo Authority is an statutory body, and that is headed by the member secretary as CEO of
Okay.
this statutory body, and the chairperson of this Central Zoo Authority is Minister, Environment,
Okay.
Forest, and Climate Change. So he is the
Okay.
chairperson. I am the, as member secretary, I am the CEO of this
Okay.
authority. There are 10 more members, in which there are 3 nominated institutions, 3 nominated members, and some ex officio members. So now what I'll do is I'll just share my screen to
Sure.
uh, to take you through that. Can I see? Should I take the all the questions once the my
Yes, sir. I would suggest we'll take it at the end of the webinar,
sure,
so we'll
sure.
complete this.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
Is it visible now? My screen.
Yes. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Right. So I'll just take you all through a journey of zoo in India. So these are the enclosures which you, if there are any remains in some of the zoo you go. So this was the
Hmm.
condition of the enclosures earlier in zoo where the animals were kept. So
Right.
this was there was not enough space, and
Hmm.
the animals hardly have any space for movement. There was no enrichment to create any naturalistic environment inside. So this was the condition initially, and this
Right.
is how our zoo, the rescue centers function, where even in the present situation also in some of the northeastern states, this is the condition where the animals are kept. So now we are trying to improve the situation, because rescue centers also fall under the category of zoo, if you go
Right.
by the definition. This is one image on the left is from Kanha. This was also
Okay.
clicked by me when I was there as field director. So when
Okay.
I came to here in Central Zoo Authority, so it was really, I found really pity for the animals, which is such a majestic and royal animal, and roams freely in the forest. And here in the zoo, it lands up finally in some small enclosures where uh, uh,
Right.
you can say that there is not dignity given to the animal which uh, he or she deserves.
Right.
Left side is an image from older days where
Hmm.
animals were kept in very, very small enclosures. So that
Right.
time it was just a royalty that people used to keep these as some very, very dingy and small spaces, that menageries, where they were just kept for showing people just for recreation. And on the right side you can see this is a enclosure. I've taken this image in the Loro Park in Spain, in Tenerife. This is also an enclosure for tiger. And on the left side also you can see that what are the smaller space. And on the right side, this is also a artificially created space, but this looks so naturalistic. So here the animal has got enough space and more of a naturalistic environment. And
Hmm.
also now in the modern zoo we provide area where animal can withdraw himself if it feels any sort of stress or disturbance. So the enclosure should not be open from all the sides so that the animal is put on stress. So it needs to have some sort of a space where it can withdraw.
Right.
Now, these are the new concepts of Zoo 360, where the animals enclosure are connected through some aerial
Right.
tunnels. And now in our country also, we have got certain places, we have got such enclosures which are connected through these aerial tunnels. So these give
Right.
animals more freedom, and they gives them a sort of vantage place where they can feel, have a look of the entire place.
Right.
So this you can see the evolution or the journey of zoos in India, that is started with the Britishers. Actually, it came as a royalty, and then Maharajas and the princely estates, following the Britishers, they started creating zoo in their estates also. So many of our older zoos are basically they were created during the British time and by the states. Now there are
Okay.
many more new zoo are coming, which are very, very modern in concept and more naturalistic in environment. And
Right.
now we give more emphasis on creating safaris, drive-through safaris, where the animal has more space to move uh, 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 and not in a zoo where they have
Hmm.
very, very limited space despite having some minimum dimensions defined in the guidelines. So this is just, I'll quickly run through these slides, because this I have already told, like this was created in
Yeah.
by an amendment in the Act in 1991. And this gives a location of the zoo map of India, where we have large, medium, small, mini and rescue, mini zoos and rescue centers. So this is a mission. This slide tells about the mission, vision, and objective. So mission is to have a better upkeep and veterinary care of all the animals which are housed in the zoo, and again the
Hmm.
best practices of management. And now we are having twinning or sharing relationship with the international zoo also. So we are partnering with them to upgrade our zoo also and bring them at the with the global standards.
Right.
Vision is basically to have a sort of contribute towards the conservation of biodiversity in the country by linking the ex situ and in situ conservation practices.
Hmm.
Objective what we do in CZA is to enforce minimum standards and norm for upkeep and healthcare of animals, and to control mushrooming of unplanned and ill-conceived zoos. So just to give you an idea, like when 92, when the CZA was created, And when we invited applications for all the existing facilities which were housing the animals, we got
Hmm.
more than 500 applications for recognizing those facilities. So
Hmm.
many of them were not up to the standards where the animal upkeep, we can say, was good. So we recognized only close to 200 facilities that time, and now we started closing down, and presently we have 150. Every year it
Okay.
happens that we add something new, but we also close down those facilities which don't follow the guidelines and where
Hmm.
the animals are not being taken care properly.
Okay.
These are the functions actually, just to specify the minimum standards, just to give you an idea. Like for a tiger, the minimum area required is to given to them is 1,000 square meters. Similarly,
Hmm.
for leopards, minimum is 500 square meters. So any zoo which doesn't give this sort of area makes available to individual animals. So we take a note of it, and the recognition of those zoo is cancelled, or that is de-recognized. Normally,
Okay.
we do evaluation every 2 to 3 years, and the recognition which we give to zoo is not lifelong. This is given for
Hmm.
a maximum period of 3 years. So every
Okay.
3 year we make a review and do evaluation, and on the basis of that we extend their recognition. So this is how we evaluate and assess the functioning of the zoo. Then recognize and de-recognize, like I told you.
Right.
Then identify endangered species for of wild animals, and we do the captive breeding. So I'll be taking up this issue separately in slides ahead. So
Right.
in telling about like in conservation breeding, what exactly we are doing. Then to
Okay.
coordinate the acquisition, exchange, and loaning of animals. So any zoo cannot acquire any animal without the permission of the Central Zoo Authority. So suppose
Okay.
if any zoo has to get a tiger from some other zoo, the proposal would come to us with the consent of the donor and the recipient zoo, and then only we allow. Similarly, for the international exchanges also, that application has to come to us, and that goes to the technical committee which takes a call. And then there are many other regulations. When any animal comes from any outside country, then there is a permission from CITES, then there is a permission from the Directorate General of Foreign Trade, then from the Animal Husbandry Department. So there are many regulations, so it is not easy for any zoo to acquire any species, exotic
Hmm.
species which comes from any international zoo.
Okay.
Then identify priorities, then master plan is approved, technical assistance, financial assistance to zoo. Then a stud book, we maintain a pedigree, a record of all the species for which we do the conservation breeding. I'm skipping these acts and rules. These I'm taking just because this is some of the important definitions.
Right.
Because many times we get complaints through various sources. Like there is some zoo has been opened, just to give you an example of a recent case from Mumbai, where there is one zoo that has been established that is not recognized from us. They
Okay.
are housing some exotic species. So for housing exotic species, any zoo does not need a permission from Central Zoo Authority unless any native species is to be kept in the zoo on display. So they can just get the animals, they can get the permission through CITES Authority from getting exotic animals from any other country, and DGFT and Animal Husbandry Department, and they can keep on display. But that zoo, by dictionary meaning, that is a zoo. But if you go by the legal meaning, legal definition from the Wildlife Protection Act, that doesn't qualify
Hmm.
as a zoo, because zoo says an establishment where captive animals are kept, and the captive animals have again been defined. Like there are schedules in the Wildlife Protection Act. So schedule 1
Hmm.
and schedule 2 animals only, they are known as captive animals. All the
Okay.
exotic species which are there in the CITES, they have been kept in the schedule 4, so they don't qualify. So suppose if somebody wants to make a zoo of only exotic species, only exotic birds,
Hmm.
or the new bird monkeys or the primates, so they don't need a permission for establishing a zoo from Central Zoo Authority unless they
Okay.
try to keep any native species.
Okay.
Just this was just to make you clear. So
Right.
any no zoo, new zoo can be established unless the permission is given from the CZA, and even that cannot be operated. Our National Zoo policy also says that except for obtaining founder animals for approved breeding program and infusion of new blood into inbred group, no zoo shall collect animals from the wild. So we ensure that in the zoo, only zoo-bred animals are brought by acquisition or transfer. So we don't allow animals which are captured from the wild, but there are exceptions when the animals come in the rescue and when we find that there is those animals need lifetime care and they are not fit for being released into the wild and rewilding is not possible. So then only we allow in certain cases by taking permission from the technical committee.
Hmm.
Similarly, zoos shall not enter into any transaction in respect of their surplus animal with any commercial establishment. Even the animal product should not be utilized for commercial purposes. So in India, no animal can be traded. Like even any zoo has to acquire any animal. Suppose they want sambar deer or cheetal deer, so they can
Hmm.
only get from any other recognized zoo. They cannot buy it from market because trading of wild animals in India
It's not
is not
allowed.
allowed. So
Hmm.
if you see that if any animal, any scheduled animal is being sold in the market, that is illegal, and that should be informed to the forest department, local forest department. So this is regarding the ownership of zoo, because many times there we get questions like whether can any private person can have a zoo or not. So this is a list of all the 156 zoo and the rescue centers. So if you can see, there are two private zoos and there are 14 zoo which are owned by NGO trust and society. So the act allows even private zoo to be established, but all the norms and standards do apply to them, and they have to follow all the guidelines. There are categories of large category, medium, small, mini zoo, and rescue center. So and this is the table which gives an idea about the how they are categorized. So I'm not going into that detail. This presentation, if anybody is interested, that can be shared and they can go through just to know more about the categorization of the zoo. Then there was one more question when I was discussing with Hemangi, like how do we monitor and how do we evaluate the zoo? So recently we started a system of evaluation of zoo. So that is known as the management effectiveness evaluation. And this was the global first. So India is the first country, and interestingly, India only has the Central Zoo Authority, a government agency to regulate the zoo. No other country as such has the government body. Normally, there are regional associations which
Right.
are non-government in nature, like in America, or you go Europe, or you go to Australia. They all have non-government regional associations. Like even World Association of Zoo and Aquariums is also a non-government association. So which regulates sort of to keep uniformity across all regional associations. And India is also a member of World Association of Zoo and Aquariums. So we see that the frameworks which are used for animal welfare across all the associations across all the countries are same. So here in India, 2 years back, we started this process of management effectiveness evaluation for zoo, and this has been being done in the tiger reserves for the evaluation of tigers for quite some time. So this is a quite a comprehensive system in which there are six sort of elements, and we take 36 criteria on which these are evaluated. And in this framework, these are six of the elements like context, planning, then input, process, and outputs.
Hmm.
So, for your information, in the first Me Zoo, the best zoo was the Darjeeling Zoo, that Padmaja Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park, that
Okay.
ranked as first among all zoo. And in the large category zoo, Chennai Zoo was rated as the best managed zoo. Now, coming to the conservation breeding, which is the rather subject of today's discussion, I
Right.
see that I've already taken much of time, so I'll be rushing fast
Hmm.
through my presentation.
Sure.
So, CZA actually identified 74 species For conservation breeding, this included about 24 species of birds, 46 of mammal, and 3 reptiles and 1 amphibian.
So just
Normally,
to interrupt, if you can just tell what is conservation breeding for a
okay,
layman, so we can start
right,
from there and then move ahead.
right. So there are two things. One is captive breeding and another is conservation breeding. Conservation breeding is with a purpose to breed only those endangered species uh, 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 whose population has declined considerably
Right.
in the wild. So only those species have been identified for breeding. And in the
Mhm.
conservation breeding, we ensure, going by the conservation breeding principles, the heterozygosity is maintained. So when we do the conservation breeding, we maintain a stud book just to see that there is no inbreeding between the individuals. But in the captive breeding, this is not the consideration as such. So for many of the species in zoo, for zoo exchange, they do breed their animals, but that is not exactly the conservation breeding. So
Mm.
conservation breeding is with a purpose of conservation. And when we do the conservation breeding, we take a number as a count of 100 minimum count to have in our zoo. And when we talk of these 100, they should be genetically, physically, and behaviorally fit individuals of the identified species. So here also we have two sorts of zoo. One is coordinating zoo and another is participating zoo. So the prime responsibility of coordinating zoo is to do the conservation breeding, to take the founder stock of these species, do the breeding, and the participating zoo, they have to maintain a population of these animals. So
Right.
taking example of any of these species like barasingha or stump-tailed macaque or smooth-coated otter or clouded leopard, so we
Mm.
target a number of 100 individuals in the Indian zoo, and globally we target a number of 250. So this is a list of the species which for which we have been doing quite well the conservation of these species, and some of these species have been released in the wild also.
Okay.
So one of the very successful conservation breeding program has been of red panda, and we release the captivity bred individuals in the Singalila National Park.
Right.
And here in this you can see the heterozygosity, because we also do the genetic profiling of all these. And just to maintain the heterozygosity, we many of our times it happens that in the Indian zoo the bloodline may be same, so we get the animals from other countries. So like red panda we had acquired from Netherlands, also from New Zealand and Australia. So just to maintain that sort of that the heterozygosity is maintained. So two red pandas were released in 2022 and three in 23. So two of these female which were released in 23, so they mated with the wild males, and last year they gave birth to two cubs each.
Wow.
So these images are not very good, but in
Right.
all there were 5 cubs. They were given birth in the wild. So these are
Oh,
some shots which are not very clear, but this
right.
was a very good, a successful program of rewilding these captivity bred animals. Then another is the conservation breeding of snow leopards. So again, the
Mhm.
Padmaja Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park or this Darjeeling Zoo has got a very good facility at Topkadara, where the red panda is also being bred. So this is the same facility where we have got in closer for the snow leopard conservation breeding. So
Mm.
this has started almost 40 years back. When we got our the first pair that was taken from Zurich in 86, and we got another pair from US Zoo in 1989. So far, there have been around 78 animals. Births have been there in the captivity, and presently there are about 14 animals. But so far, they have not been released in the wild. So now this year, we are planning to release them in the wild, and for that we have identified an area in the Sikkim, in the western Sikkim. So we maybe most probably this year, if all goes well. So because we in the Darjeeling we have already started them sort of acclimatization for them. to feed them in a natural way, feed randomization, then minimizing human imprinting, then hunting skills like I told about how we did for tigers, and the
Right.
creation of naturalistic enrichment. So these are things which are being done, and hopefully, if all goes well, so we'll be releasing them in Sikkim. Then there are some other very, very important species, and the conservation breeding is being done in another zoo of northeastern area. So Sipai
Mm.
Jhala Zoological Park is in Agartala in Tripura, and they are doing the conservation breeding of four species. One is clouded leopard, but again we are having issues because in clouded leopard also we don't have many individuals, so the founder stock is very low, and again there would be some issue of inbreeding. So now we are trying to get some more individuals from other countries, because in our country we don't have the clouded leopards in captivity. So in case there would be any issue to get from other international zoo, then we would be trying to get some more founders from the wild population. But again, capturing this animal even in the wild may not be very, very easy.
Right.
Another is the leaf monkey or the spectacle monkey. This is endangered.
Wow.
So we are doing the conservation breeding, and then again of pigtail macaque. Binturong is another very interesting species, but again we are looking for more individuals of this species before we
Mm.
take up this. And this is the only carnivorous mammal in our country which has a prehensile tail, so it can hold anything using its tail. So
Oh,
that is an
okay.
interesting feature of this.
Wow.
Clouded leopard, we are doing very good conservation breeding in the same Sipai Jala Zoological Park. But again, here we were having some issues with the survival of the cubs. So presently, the biologist there, he is really very, very good. So this time we separated the cubs from mother just when they were 2 days old, and we
Oh,
hand reared them, and this was really very, very successful. And this is
wow.
how these two cubs were doing. They are just 3 months old. So this is
Wow.
another one of the most beautiful and very, very rare and elusive species. Very
Right.
hard to see this in the wild. Again, this is an
Right.
image from the Sipai Jhala only, and that biologist is Chiranjeev Devnath is doing excellent work. These are some of the other species which for which conservation breeding is being done. So for the pangolin, Nandankanan Zoological Park, Biological Park in Bhubaneswar, and if you uh, do some sort of a literature study, you will find that most of the studies on the behavior of pangolin have been done in the captivity only, and that too in the Nandankanan. So that
Okay.
is also a advantage of having the zoo, having the animals in the zoo. This species, Hulok gibbon, another very, very interesting species. So this is being bred in Itanagar Biological Park in Arunachal Pradesh. Another interesting species, very hard to see in the wild, because mostly this is active during night time, and
Mm-hmm.
mostly it is captured in the camera traps. But Nehru Zoological Park, Hyderabad is doing excellent work in close association with the CCMB Hyderabad, and close to 300 individuals have been released in the wild, including the Amrabad Tiger Reserve. Now, again, one more important thing we are doing is that biobanking, because the frozen zoo, this is also a sort of concept where we keep the genetic material of the different species, either it may be spawns or oocytes or embryos, or any genetic material, maybe hair or some part of any body organ, which when the animal dies, which are taken in sample for forensic or any other species. So these are cryo preserved at very, very low temperature. So with our help, we established a lab in CCMB. So the lab is with the name LACONS. This stands for Laboratory for Conservation of Endangered Species. So this is
Mm.
also one of the interesting thing which we have been doing. Now I'll stop my presentation here because I'm overshooting my time. Uh, there were some many more other things to take, but I'll just stop here
Mm.
so that I can have take the questions if the people are interested.
Yes. So one more question we've left with this central after the central zoo authority one. Um, why can't there be zoo in every district place so that people have an access to wildlife? And can we create an urban zoo for wildlife around towns and cities? Is
Right.
that possible?
Absolutely. Because now we focus more on, like I told you, that
Right.
rather than having initially, if you see the more number of zoo were because of the deer park.
Correct.
I'm sure the younger generation might not have seen those deer park, that badly managed deer park. And the recent one which closed in Delhi was in Haus Khas. So in
Right.
Haus Khas, in the heart of Delhi itself, there was a deer park that was being managed by the municipal corporation. And there were around 600 cheetal, just because this breeds very easily. So the
Hmm.
founder stock must have been only 10 to 12 individuals, and just by breeding in that smaller space, the number swelled to 600. Now the problem was, because of inbreeding, there were many deformities coming up with those animals. There were the fights between the males. Then again,
Hmm.
these feral dogs were entering inside the area. No expert to take a look after them. So our intention always in CZA is to have some facilities or zoo which are now at the global standards. So
Right.
like if you take like from your state only, the
Hmm.
Gorewada Zoo.
Goribadam.
So
Yeah.
that is a new coming up zoo that is going to be really very very good. So all the new zoo which are there to be established, another is going to come up in Lucknow in Kukrail. Then there is one very large safari to come up in Aravallis in Gurgaon and Noor. So
Hmm.
all these now we have got international consultants with all the zoo. Like in Gorewada, Bernard Harrison is there,
Right.
who is known for his work in Singapore Zoo. Similarly, for Lucknow Zoo also he is the person. So now, so now, what we approve is not any city coming up proposal to establish a very small sort of facility.
Hmm.
If you have got anything big to create, and that too we are more interested in giving the permission, is the safari, a drive-in safari, where the
Right.
animals have got more space to move around, and where you can create more naturalistic environment. So any proposal is welcome if that qualifies in the criteria or the guidelines which are prescribed by the CZA. Again, it has to be a very good business model also,
Hmm.
because what we propose to have a sort of self-sustaining entity.
Right. Hmm.
Many of our zoo are because in very very bad shape, just
Hmm.
because they don't generate enough revenue. The
Hmm.
best managed zoos in our country in terms of business is the Banerghatta zoo. The revenue that it generates is close to 55 crores annually. Then Mysore Zoo generates around 35 crore annually. Otherwise,
Hmm.
most of the zoo, and they have a footfall close to 35 to 40 lakh per annum. In
Right.
Indian Zoo, the annual footfall is close to 8 crore people going every year to the zoo. So there are more
Wow.
number of people going to zoo, but the pricing of the ticket is such that the most of the zoo are not self-sustainable. So we
Right.
need to have more pricing, more facilities for the visitors. So, so any proposal which is self-sustaining has got a good sort of facility for both visitors as well as for animals, that can also always be considered for the approval.
Right. 1 minute, sir. Mm, I think something has happened. Anyways, we'll take up one question from the
Right.
chat. Uh, Naveen says during the ex situ conservation, how to increase successful captive breeding of endangered species. Uh, Hi, sir. What are all the considerable points?
Right. So first thing I told, like the ministry has already, after quite a brainstorming, they identified 100 species. Similarly, in CZA also we identified 74 species, like which are the priority species for conservation breeding. So just to name a couple of species like which we identified was, like for the birds there are many pheasants like cheer pheasant, blitz tragopan.
Right.
So we are breeding British Tragopan in Kohima. That has got a very good facility where they are breeding also. Then red jungle fowl in some of the zoo like in Sagar Bagh in Gujarat, and again in Darjeeling Zoo. And after breeding, we are releasing them to into the wild. Now, coming to what are the criteria which when we go for conservation breeding, what we look for.
Right.
So first thing is to have a very good founder stock. So
Hmm.
good founder stock genetically means, when we talk of genetically, it has to be uh, 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 very good traits. Genetically, behaviorally, it should be good, that individual, and that should be of middle age. So that's how we identify. And going by the estate book, we see that there is no inbreeding as such between the individuals when we do the conservation breeding. So normally we try to have 4 to 5 pairs of animals when we start the conservation breeding, and then we try to infuse or bring more bloodline into the this process to
Right.
have to maintain the heterozygosity. So this is how we do.
Sure. We have a question from Shanaya. She says, "What is your backstory of getting into forest service? Like you did have a passion when you were a child. Is there any backstory?"
No, I have already in the very
Yes.
I told, like that time I didn't aspire as such about becoming an IFS officer, because that time I more wanted to become a sort of scientist working in the field of immunochemistry or immunology. But
Oh, okay.
destiny had planned something differently for me, and I have a
Right.
different travel altogether, and I finally came to forest service.
Sure.
But that has had been a really satisfying journey for me in the forest service.
Wonderful. She goes on to say, "Did you get motivated by someone like, or is there any mentor, or it was your own ideas? I guess. Did you look up to someone and enter this, or it was on your own?"
Not exactly, but when I joined forest service, and the most satisfying for me had been the Kanha, actually some of the legends of wildlife conservation, if we look back to them. So
Right.
like some of the stalwarts, when the H.S. Pawar Sahib, he was the first director of Kanha Tiger Reserve, and he got Padma Bhushan also. And he also became the founder director of Wildlife Institute of India. Then Rajesh Gopal sir, he headed
Right.
Project Tiger for quite some time, and now he's in the heading Global Tiger Forum. So
Right.
these were the my predecessors, to whom I always they always inspired actually when I got into the wildlife conservation. So they
Right.
were motivation, inspiration.
All right. So we have Mr. Nair who wants to ask a question, and then in the end we'll take up Sanjay Deshpande's questions. Here are a lot of them. So,
Sure.
Mr. Nair, can you just unmute and ask if you would want to?
Good evening, ma'am.
Okay, it's Miss.
Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, I have already sent Sanjay sir a question in
All
his
right.
chat. In his chat.
Okay.
Actually,
So
it was
have
a private one. It was a private one.
all
So
right, private one.
I'd like to ask him to look up on his chat and see the question for himself.
All right, fine. We'll take it up.
Himangi,
No
one thing
issue.
I missed actually, once
Sure.
Sanjay ji, I've taken up his question. I
Yeah.
would like to make people know the difference between a zoo and a rescue center.
Right.
So that also I'll tell them, like why the rescue
Sure.
centers are important. So first,
Sure.
yes,
So you can continue. I think you can just mention this, and then we will go
sure,
to
sure.
the next one.
So like the
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, sir. Continue.
right. So if you go by the definition of zoo, that also includes the rescue center. So rescue
Right.
center is the place where we keep the animals for the lifetime care, and these are
Correct.
object exhibit area. So the rescue center, public is not allowed to go, and they cannot see the visit and see the animals. All the guidelines, the minimum dimensions, the all the minimum standards which we apply for the zoo, they are the same for the rescue center also. Like if in a zoo, a tiger requires a minimum of 1,000 square meter area. So in the rescue center also, it is the same as 1,000 square meter. The only
Right.
difference is that they are off exhibit and the public is not allowed.
Right.
Why do we
Right.
need it? Actually, many times you must have seen, that just because of the good conservation effort, the population is increasing, especially of tigers and leopards. And many times it happens that they come towards the human habitation, and
Yes.
when there is any sort of conflict with humans, so
Hmm.
normally we go for removing the problem or the conflict animals from that habitation. So we
Right.
capture them and then we bring them to the rescue center. First preference is always to rewild them or release them in the habitat. So suppose if any leopard or tiger is captured and removed from any habitation, so the first effort is to release it back to the wild.
Correct.
Sometimes it happens that the animal has some serious injury.
Right.
And if you know that going by the history, it is not safe to release the animal, it may cause more sort of conflict and more injury or death to human. So in that case, the animal has to be kept for lifetime care. So normally, rescue center is for those animals which are to be kept beyond 30 days. If they are to be kept for less than 30 days, suppose if we bring them and then want to release, then we call them as a transit center, not a rescue center. But in the rescue center, we keep them for longer duration. Another is the abandoned cubs. Many times it happens that mother abandons the cubs. They have to be taken care of. Then they are brought to the rescue center. Illegal trafficking of exotic animals, they also land up in the rescue centers. So normally the conflict animals, abandoned cubs, and the exotic animals. So for them, we need the rescue centers. Yes, now we
All
can
right.
take it.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I'm waiting for Miss Nair some clarification on her question. We'll take up Sanjay's question till then. So, Sanjay,
Sure.
are you there around?
Yes, I am there.
Yes, you can. Please feel free.
You can read out the question.
All right, I will read out the
I,
question.
just wait, I'll read.
No, no, I went somewhere. I have two questions. What are the differences or say challenges in managing a park as large as Kana vis-a-vis small park like Pench?
Very, very interesting. Uh, like, I mean, those have been quite a different experience for me because for Pinch also I had some additional charge. And even when I was CCF Sivani, so mostly in a week for 2 to 3 days, I was always there in the park only. So the area, if you see that in Page the area is small, but there are different challenges because of the villages which are still there close to the core area and even in the buffer. That challenge was not much when we were there in Kana, and Kana is known for sort of copybook style management, and the staff there had been in sort of very good habit of doing all the routine works without waiting for any instruction from the superiors. So the staff in Kana Tiger Reserve I found was more sincere, more dedicated, more committed. And in Kana, we do had the patrolling camps inside the park area, unlike many other tiger reserves. So that was challenging for the staff, but that gave a sort of edge when we talk of the protection. And in Kana, we also had some very good relationship with the local community. So, and a variety of different works which we were taking up there in Kana, like in active wildlife management. So, like in Page, there were issues when we initially went for capturing the cheetal, but in Kana, it has become a sort of very routine affair, doing conservation breeding or capturing animals or training the tiger cubs for rewilding. So, but the reason also has been that the Kana is quite an old sort of institution, and the page was established a little late. So gradually it took over, and now if you see the management effectiveness evaluation ranking, so page also ranked as among the best. And
Yes.
now they all these Satpura, Pinch, and Kana are at par. So you can compare like I mean, Kanha area being large, it was more challenging and more varied activities. But again, all the parks are different and all have different issues in management.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's perfect. I
Yeah.
actually asked this question just because ki It's like many times people think कि अरे forest तो forest है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? But they are, every forest is different. This is something everybody should know.
No,
That's
I,
why
I tell
the
you,
question.
I tell you one very, very important issue is like which we have been ignoring for quite some time is the grassland in any of the tiger reserve.
Yeah.
And if the people who have been going Kana, they must be, they will appreciate that the meadows in Kana are degrading. So
Yes.
like
Yes.
Dismastakia has taken over the palatable grasses.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
grassland management is very, very important. And
True.
each and every grassland is different from one another.
Correct.
Similarly, each tiger reserve has a different approach for management.
True.
So you cannot take the same management practice and adopt that to in any other place.
Correct.
I
So
agree. I agree.
each place has to be managed differently.
Yeah.
Yes. So the next question Sanjay has asked, are our project tigers not becoming like big open zoo where tourists moves in gypsy while wild animals are open? So what's the real solution to accommodate increased wildlife population in these parks?
Right. So, like you all are aware, like after 2012 regulations related to ecotourism in the tiger reserves, especially in the core area, only maximum of 20% of the area is open for tourism. So, suppose
Right.
like in Satpura Tiger Reserve, it was less than 20%. So it was not possible for them to increase it to 20%. And in Kana, it was more than 20%. So it was brought down to 20%. So that is the maximum limit which can be opened up for tourism. Now, again, coming to the question of whether having tourism or not, on tourism, there are positive and negative sides both. Going to the stress of animals because there are studies done by analyzing the glucocorticosteroid in their fecal matters, and it was found that there are stress to animals because of the tourism and movement of vehicles inside the park. But again, the economy of that area, and unless you involve all the stakeholders in the process of conservation, so conserving tiger would really be a big dream. So having their stakes also in the conservation process of all the tourists who are visiting there, of all the local community who are dependent in many ways in getting employment because of tourism. So now, but important thing is how does it need to be regulated? Because now what we see in many of the places, the ill side of the tourism having responsible tourism or not having wildlife tourism. So now people have started coming just for fun or recreation. So that is not a good development. Recently, a committee has been formed by the Supreme Court to look into all these affairs. One issue is also defining the noise limit because in many of the places they have become the destination places for the destination wedding.
Right.
So there is again a proposal to make them a sort of silent zone like what is around the hospitals. So why can't we do for giving a silent space to animals? So the committee is working on that. I'm also a member of that committee, which has been constituted by the Supreme Court. So soon new regulations will come in place for managing the tourism, not only in the tiger reserves, but also across the protected areas.
Sure.
Yes.
We take one last question and then we move on. We'll close this. Mr. Raza says, good evening, everyone. His question is, do we need permission for transit camps? Permission and
Yes.
approval.
Yes, in the Wildlife Protection Act, for establishment of a transit facility is given by the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state. But in transit camp, you can keep the animal only up to a maximum limit of 30 days. Beyond 30 days, if you need to keep the animals, then you need to have a rescue center.
Okay. And we had the lady asking, but I'm not clear of her question yet. She has asked, did you face any issues before the central zoo posting? Now I'm not very clear about the question itself. So I think Sanjay, would you want to summarize on this?
Yeah, sure.
Today's
Good evening, Sanjay, and it was really pleasure to have you on this forum, I must say. And some information about conservation as everybody likes to see a tiger. but how to protect the tiger, that's the real job. And zoos and all those things, the rescue centers are equally important, because most people think zoo is just like a garden. They don't understand the importance of zoo and maintaining properly all those things, and how it is directly related to conservation. I'm sure more places, as someone asked, more places there should be zoo, because as you very rightly said, which I appreciate and admire, nobody openly accept that wildlife tourism is becoming costlier, and it will be soon only for riches, which hardly 1% or 2% people can go to the forest and see a tiger. But for them, zoo is a good option, and for that, association of our NGOs, like all those, and who can join hands and how we can help. This was very much important session. Rather, I will say one of the best session I have ever come across on jungle wells, because this information very few people know. Even I'm sure not many forest officers also know these things about it.
Absolutely, because when I was discussing with one of the senior officers in the Madhya Pradesh, who had the PCC of wildlife, so he was also not very sure like what exactly the zoos are doing here in India.
Exactly.
Because once you go in the zoo and just see the animals, you think that these are only kept there for recreation. The most important, the purpose of having a zoo is conservation, education, and research.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So I'm sure Jungle Bells and Hemangi, you can use this information as well. You can arrange visits of a zoo also, and zoo also needs our support, just the way forest
Correct.
needs our support, sort of thing.
Correct.
So
Correct.
thank you very much. And next time the session we should do about Sanjay Dada's photography special.
Yes. Well, he was.
Today, because of this information, we couldn't get a glimpse of his photographs all
But
over
he
across
was
the
very,
world.
very, very, very persistent that we speak about
Yeah.
this topic, and I'm so happy
Exactly.
because it was a very untouched one, and
Yeah.
me myself did not know a lot of things which
Yeah.
has come is come as a learning.
Definitely.
We will surely do. This
Yeah.
session will be up on the YouTube. Those who have missed it today, we will be circulating it, on our social media. So follow us, as well as we will forward it to as many people to increase the awareness about the
Yes.
zoos. Yes.
And thank you very much, Sanjay. And via Jungle Bells, as well as myself, Hemangi, and all our team will be always available there to assist in any possible way for all this conservation work, is all I can say. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You have always been very kind to me, and I really appreciate your concern towards wildlife conservation. And it was really pleasure for me to discuss this because when I was talking to Himangi, like what should I discuss in my talk with the audience. So just because many people don't know the role what zoo play in the wildlife conservation, so I just wanted to highlight this. So
Sure.
it was really a pleasure talking to you all, and I hope that if you have got any more query or any question, so I
Yeah,
would
we
be
will definitely.
happy. I think if my mail ID can be shared,
Yes,
I'll
we will
request
be doing that.
I'll just type in the chat box. So
Yes,
if
sir.
anybody is interested, so
And Hemangi, we will mention it in the YouTube also. That
All right.
on YouTube also will mention. So those who will be seeing the recordings, they can send mail to Sanjay Dada.
Sure.
And his presentation also, because that's the important information.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Sure. And a promise from you, Sanjay Dada, that next session will be about your photography.
Photography, yeah. We would love to see the photos. Yes.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank
for
you.
accepting our
Thank you.
invitation.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.